My wife thought I didn't know about the affair. She was wrong. I always believed that if you worked hard enough, life would eventually sign a peace treaty with you. I was ambitious from a young age, not the loud kind, not the motivational poster type, just disciplined, focused, the kind of man who shows up early and leaves when the job is actually done. That mindset carried me far. I earned a solid income for my state, not flashy but respected, the kind of success that buys time and options. I met my wife Rachel when we were young and broke and full of confidence we had not yet earned. She laughed easily back then. She believed in me before there was anything to point at and say, "See, I told you so." We grew together, tiny apartment, mismatched furniture, shared dreams scribbled on napkins. 10 years went by almost quietly. 2 kids later, Olivia and Miles. A house filled with routines and noise, and the comforting chaos of a family that felt real and earned. I thought we were solid. Not perfect, but honest. The kind of couple that survives storms. Because they know how to close the windows together. The night everything changed did not come with thunder or drama. It came with a phone call in a parking lot. The sky was dull orange, my office lights shutting off one by one behind me. My phone buzzed, and I almost ignored it. It was Mason, an old friend. Not emotional, not dramatic. The kind of guy who measures his words like they cost money. He said, "Dan, I need to tell you something." And right there my instincts woke up. I leaned against my car and said, "Okay, talk." He paused longer than comfortable, then said, "I have seen Rachel with Brent Calloway. Not once, not by accident. For a while now." My brain rejected the sentence before my heart could react. Brent was an acquaintance, polite smile, smooth talker, a man who once shook my hand in my own backyard and complimented my grill like that meant loyalty. I asked Mason how long. He said months, maybe longer. "People assumed you knew." I thanked him calmly, which surprised both of us. Hung up and sat in silence. No shouting, no shaking hands. Just clarity settling in like cold air. I drove home slow, the radio off, every red light feeling intentional. Inside the house, everything looked the same. Kids laughing, dishes clinking, Rachel smiling at me like nothing in the world had shifted. She asked about my day. I answered with one word. That night she noticed the distance immediately, asked what was wrong, touched my arm. Concern perfectly placed. I said nothing, not because I was weak, but because I was thinking. I had spent my life solving problems by staying calm when others panicked, and this was no different. Confrontation would give her the stage. Emotion would give her excuses. I needed facts, not feelings, strategy, not noise. Over the next days I became observant, quiet, colder than usual, not cruel, just distant. Rachel felt it. I could see it in the way she studied my face when she thought I was not looking. She asked again if something was wrong. I answered with short, polite sentences. She started over-explaining her schedule, mentioning names I did not ask about, creating alibis for conversations we were not having. And that was when I knew this was not a misunderstanding. This was a pattern. I began documenting everything, not obsessively, methodically, messages left open, calendar overlaps, financial irregularities that suddenly made sense. I did not spy like a jealous teenager. I observed like a man preparing a case. What surprised me most was not her betrayal. It was how calm I felt once I committed to a plan. Grief came later, but clarity came first. I knew I was not going to scream or beg or make scenes in front of my children. I knew I would not let this story be rewritten with me as the villain or the fool. If Rachel wanted secrecy, I would give her exposure, not out of revenge, but out of truth. Because truth has a way of standing on its own when you stop protecting lies. I treated her with polite distance, no affection, no anger, and that unsettled her more than shouting ever could. She was losing control of the narrative, and she felt it. At night, while she slept beside me, I stared at the ceiling and planned my future. Not hers, mine. I thought about my kids, my career, my reputation, the life I had built brick by brick, and I decided that nothing and no one would take that away from me quietly. This was not the end of my story. It was the moment the tone changed, and I was still the one holding the pen. Once I committed to silence, it became my sharpest tool. Rachel kept trying to pull words out of me like loose threads, casual questions at first, then concern, then irritation disguised as care. She asked if I was tired, stressed, unhappy at work, if I needed a vacation, if I was mad at her for something she could not quite name. I answered calmly every time, "I am fine, work is busy, just thinking," and that uncertainty unsettled her. People who live double lives rely on predictability. They need reactions they can manage, and I gave her none. Meanwhile, I started moving pieces quietly. I spoke to a lawyer during my lunch break. Not dramatic, not emotional, just factual. I said I need to understand my options. I need to protect my children and what I built. He listened, asked smart questions, and told me something that stuck with me. Information is leverage, and timing is power. I left that office lighter, not because things were better, but because they were clearer. I began gathering proof carefully, not hacking phones or doing anything reckless, just paying attention, screenshots of messages that appeared when her phone lit up on the counter, dates that did not align, expenses that did not match her explanations, social media interactions that were a little too familiar. I also spoke to people quietly, not accusing, just listening. You would be surprised how much people already know when you stop pretending everything is perfect. The whispers Mason mentioned were real, and once I stopped shielding Rachel, the truth stopped hiding. At home, the atmosphere changed. The kids felt it before either of us acknowledged it. Olivia asked why Mommy and Daddy were quieter. Miles asked if I was mad at him. That nearly broke me. But it also reminded me why I was doing this with precision instead of rage. I reassured them, stayed present, helped with homework, made pancakes on Saturday mornings. I refused to let my children pay the price for an adult decision they did not make. Rachel grew restless. She started picking small fights, criticizing how I loaded the dishwasher, how late I worked, how distant I had become. She wanted a reaction, a flaw she could point to later, something to balance the scales. I did not give it to her. I apologized when appropriate, stayed calm when she raised her voice, and watched her frustration grow. Guilt does not like silence. It prefers chaos. One evening, she finally confronted me directly, sat across from me at the dining table, arms crossed, eyes sharp. She said, "This is not normal. You are not normal. What is going on with you?" I looked at her for a long moment, really looked, and realized how little I recognized the woman in front of me. I said, "I am just seeing things more clearly lately." That was all. Nothing else. She laughed nervously and said, "You are being dramatic," but her hands were shaking just enough to notice. Behind the scenes, I prepared the reveal, not impulsively, deliberately. I spoke again with my lawyer. We organized everything, timelines, evidence, witness statements from people who were tired of pretending. We discussed how to protect my assets legally and ethically, how to shield the kids from unnecessary fallout, how to make sure the truth came out once and cleanly instead of in 1,000 messy arguments. This was not about humiliation. It was about control of the facts. The day I chose was intentional. A family gathering Rachel insisted on hosting, relatives, friends, people who mattered to her image. The kind of room where lies feel safe because everyone is smiling. She was nervous all day. Over-decorating, over-cooking, over-performing. She asked me 3 times if everything was okay between us. I smiled and said yes. That smile cost me more than any argument ever could. That night, as people filled our living room laughing and sipping drinks, I stood there calm, listening, waiting, feeling the strange quiet confidence that comes when you know the ending but everyone else is still guessing. Rachel caught my eye from across the room, searching my face for reassurance, for permission, for safety, and I realized something important in that moment. I was no longer afraid of losing her. I was only focused on not losing myself. When everyone had arrived and the room reached that comfortable loudness people get after the second drink, I asked for a moment. Nothing dramatic, just a calm request. Forks paused. Conversation slowed. Rachel turned toward me with a tight smile that asked, "What are you doing?" I stood there steady, heart slow, voice even, and said, "I want to clear something up tonight, because honesty matters to me and to my children." The room shifted immediately. People feel truth before they hear it. I did not accuse. I presented dates, messages, overlaps, facts laid out like a simple timeline. I never raised my voice, never insulted her, never used emotional language. I said, "Rachel has been involved with Brent Calloway for an extended period of time. This is not a misunderstanding or a rumor. This is documented." The silence that followed was heavy and absolute. Rachel laughed once, sharp and panicked, said, "This is insane. This is you being paranoid." But her eyes betrayed her. They searched the room for allies and found none. Someone asked quietly if it was true. Rachel opened her mouth, closed it, then started crying. Not the soft, sad kind, the chaotic kind that comes when a story collapses. Brent was not there. Wisely, phones stayed down, no one recorded, because shock has a way of freezing people in place. I continued calmly. I said I did not bring this up to embarrass anyone. I brought it up because secrecy allows lies to grow, and I will not raise my children in a house built on deception. Rachel accused me of being cold, controlling, emotionally absent. She tried to redirect the narrative, but it did not land. People had watched me show up for years. They knew my character, they saw my restraint, and they saw her desperation. The contrast did the work for me. I said we will be separating, and I asked that everyone respect our children and not involve them in adult issues. Then I sat down. Conversation over. People left quietly, offering looks of support. Some hugged me. Some just nodded. Rachel locked herself in the bathroom. I cleaned the kitchen, tucked the kids into bed, told them Mommy was upset and needed space, that we both loved them very much. They accepted it with the quiet resilience children have when they feel honesty without details. The legal process moved faster than emotions. My lawyer filed first, strategically. We presented evidence before accusations could be manufactured. Rachel tried to shift blame. Publicly, claimed I was distant and work-obsessed, that I drove her away. But the timeline did not support her story. Facts are stubborn like that. The court cared less about feelings and more about consistency, documentation, and credibility. And on that front, I was prepared. Rachel became angry when sympathy did not arrive the way she expected. She told people I had planned everything, that I humiliated her, that I was calculating. And for once she was not wrong. I had planned, but planning is not cruelty. It is self-respect, and people recognized the difference. The settlement reflected that. I retained most of our joint property, primary stability for the kids, and a clean path forward. Not because I was ruthless, but because I was ready. The hardest part was watching someone I once loved noting my calm as betrayal. But I learned something powerful during that time. You do not owe chaos your participation. You can step out of the storm and still let the storm pass through. Without you, Rachel eventually moved out. The house felt quieter, emptier, but also lighter, like a window had been opened after years of stale air. I did not celebrate. I did not gloat. I rebuilt. Mornings with my kids, work with purpose, evenings without tension. The narrative shifted slowly, not just in public, but inside me. I stopped asking how this happened and started asking what comes next. And that question felt like freedom. After Rachel moved out, the house did not echo the way people warn you it will. It settled instead, like a place that had been holding its breath and finally exhaled. The kids adapted faster than I expected, not because they did not care, but because stability is louder than explanations. I kept routines tight, school drop-offs, dinners at the table, movie nights on Fridays, and slowly the tension they had been absorbing began to fade. That mattered more to me than any legal win. But the story was not finished yet, because endings like this never come clean. Rachel did not disappear quietly. She oscillated between apology and accusation. Some days, she texted long messages about mistakes and regret. Other days she warned me that I would pay for humiliating her, that people would eventually see my true nature. I read everything, responded to almost nothing. My lawyer handled communication when it mattered. Emotion does not belong in documentation, and I was done improvising. Brent finally surfaced publicly, not bravely, but defensively. He told mutual acquaintances that he had been misled, that Rachel said we were practically separated, that he was dragged into drama he never signed up for. The irony was impressive. A man who stepped into another family's home now claiming confusion. But lies collapse under their own weight, especially when no one is willing to carry them anymore. His reputation took a quiet hit. Invitations slowed, calls stopped, and I learned something interesting. Consequences do not always shout. Sometimes they just withdraw oxygen. At work I expected whispers, judgment, distraction. Instead I was met with respect. People appreciate composure under pressure. Clients trusted me more. Leadership leaned in. I was promoted within a year, not because of the situation, but because I did not let the situation consume me. Success became my quiet response, not to prove anything to Rachel, but to remind myself that my life trajectory was still mine to direct. Rachel struggled more than she admitted. Mutual friends drifted away, not out of cruelty, but discomfort. She blamed me for that too, said I poisoned the well, but the truth is, wells dry up when people stop believing what they are drinking. She tried to renegotiate terms through guilt, through the kids, through nostalgia. I held firm boundaries, polite, consistent, unemotional. Boundaries are not walls. They are instructions for how to treat you. One afternoon she showed up unannounced while the kids were at school. She looked tired, thinner, less certain. She asked if we could talk, really talk. I agreed. Not because I owed her closure, but because I had it. She asked meaning questions. Why I never fought for her. Why I exposed everything instead of working it out privately. Why I became so cold. I listened, then answered honestly. I did fight. I fought by protecting my future. I exposed the truth because lies were already hurting our children. And I was not cold. I was clear. Clarity feels cold to people who benefit from confusion. She cried quietly, not theatrically this time, and said she never thought I would walk away so calmly. She said she thought I needed her more. And there it was, the real betrayal underneath the obvious one. The assumption that my worth depended on her presence. I told her she underestimated me. And that was something she would have to live with, not as punishment, but as reality. When she left, I felt no triumph, just peace, the kind that settles when a chapter truly closes. Later that evening, my kids asked if Mommy was okay. I said she was learning, just like all of us, and that answer felt true. Months passed, then a year. Life did not become perfect, but it became honest, and honesty is underrated. It gives you back your energy, your focus, your humor. I laughed more, slept better, dated carefully when I was ready, not to fill a gap, but to explore a future. Sometimes people ask how I stayed so calm through it all, how I did not lose myself, and I tell them the truth. I remembered who I was before I was betrayed. Ambition does not disappear when someone breaks your trust. It sharpens. Integrity does not weaken under pressure. It reveals itself, and revenge is loud, but dignity is effective. The last thing I expected after everything settled was gratitude, not toward Rachel, not toward Brent, but toward the moment that forced me to wake up. Life has a strange way of correcting your posture when you lean too far into comfort. Years passed, and the chaos became context, not a wound. The kids grew older, stronger, more observant. They learned without lectures that honesty matters and that self-respect is not loud. It is consistent. Our home became a place of openness. Questions were answered in age-appropriate ways. No villains painted, no bitterness passed down like an heirloom. Rachel eventually stabilized too, not in the way she once imagined, but in the way life allows when lessons are accepted instead of fought. Our communication became functional, about schedules, school events, milestones, nothing more, nothing less. We were no longer a story, just two adults co-parenting with boundaries, and that was enough. I did not need apologies to move forward. I needed alignment, and I had found it within myself. Professionally, I continued to grow. Ambition matured into leadership. I mentored younger colleagues, not with speeches, but with example. Show up prepared, stay calm when tested, document your work, protect your integrity. I never shared my personal story unless asked, and even then I kept it simple. People draw strength from simplicity, not spectacle. Eventually, I met someone new, not a replacement, not a rescue, but a partner, someone who valued clarity, who did not flinch at boundaries, who understood that trust is built in small, predictable actions. I took it slow, not out of fear, but out of respect for the life I had rebuilt. Love felt different this time, steadier, quieter, less performative, and that suited me just fine. Looking back, I understand now that betrayal did not break my family. Secrecy tried to, but truth intervened. The moment I chose silence over reaction, strategy over impulse, I reclaimed control, not over Rachel, but over myself. That distinction matters. Control over others is fragile. Control over yourself compounds. If there is a lesson in my story, it is not about catching someone or exposing them publicly. It is about refusing to shrink when tested, about understanding that dignity is not passive. It is active, deliberate, sometimes uncomfortable, and always worth it. I did not win because she lost. I won because I refused to abandon my values when it would have been easier to burn everything down. Today, when I lock my door at night and turn off the lights, there is no tension in my chest, no rehearsed conversations in my head, just quiet. And that quiet is earned. My children sleep knowing their father stands steady. My work reflects who I am. My future feels open, And if betrayal ever knocks again, it will find a man who already knows his worth and does not negotiate with chaos.